Hello everyone, SirMonkeySuit here, back again with Hunter x Hunter. We are on episode 143, and in the last episode we obviously carried on alongside Killua and Alluka, trying to get to Gon to obviously help him out of that the whole life support predicament that Gon is currently in, by obviously using a wish granted by Alluka, or the something as they like to refer to it as. And they're being chased down by Illumi and Hisoka. Now, last episode, Goto died. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, objectively, I mean, I talked a bit about it last episode in the post-discussion, but, like, it was one of, like, those things where I kind of tossed it up, like, and, like, on one side, it's like, oh, God, like, he's such a cool guy, but we didn't really know him all that much, like, you know, like, we got maybe like an episode or two with him, but I like, objectively, it's like, of course Hisoka was going to beat him, no problem. And also, objectively, I kind of like the whole thing of it coming out of nowhere so quickly. Like that fight lasted next to nothing, like next to no time at all, and objectively, it's like one of those things where I kind of like that, because it's not one of those things that where, you know, shows can sort of drag things out to make it like seem like a lot more epic and sort of level between certain characters. And because they set it up that way, especially in the episode previously at the very end, it was like, you know, it was Hisoka versus Goto, and Goto was so confident in his abilities that it was like, oh, like, for a second it allowed us to almost feel like, wait a minute, is Goto actually better than we think? And it turns out, like, the thing that was in the back of our heads beforehand, where it's like, it's Hisoka though, there's no way he's going to beat him, was actually the right thing all along. But the fact that they managed to just sort of, you know, like, throw that element of doubt up in the air that whether Goto was actually up to scratch, and on like some sort of level to hang with Ahsoka, was just completely cut short and dead as fast as obviously the fight ended, which is why I think it worked so well and got such a response. You know, so I think it was probably the best thing that they could have done, but it, you know, it was shocking. And yeah, so unfortunately Goto has passed away, if that ever comes up again, which I feel like it will. I feel like Ahsoka will, like, he's not wanted to hide that kind of thing. I feel like once they come into contact with Killua or anything like that, like, that's the kind of the information that Hisoka will give out. Like you said, I killed him. Of course he will, you know. The big thing that ended up happening last episode, though, was the whole vote situation, the election thing, where we now have a new faction called the anti-chairman faction, which is something that the leader of that doesn't really like the idea of it, but they've been kind of forced into that whole thing. And that is alongside, so it's Pterodine who's the leader. He's alongside Bushidora and Lupe, which is almost like kind of spurred on by Morel from the sort of from the outset, because of the information that he got given about Alluka from Killua. So, you know, it allows them to basically form this whole thing to go after Illumi and get this whole situation sorted out. So I love the fact that Killua actually thought about this, and like, by basically making it a legal thing to hunt down Illumi and just get rid of him once and for all, because he's becoming a pain in the arse to Killua. So there's that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. They've also brought up the commandments thing, which I would like them to go into more. You know, with Bushidora seeming to be like a sort of advocate for all those commandments, it seems like they will bring it up. But yeah, I'm rambling quite a bit. So we're just going to get into episode 143 and see what we get. So without further ado, let's go. Okay, episode 143. Right. Definitely ended interesting there with the last sort of screenshot we had there of the votes, of basically going for a run-off between the top four. The vote for the top 8 basically, you know, ended, and Parson is getting much closer now with a 46.1%. So he only needs another 4% of the votes, and he's got it. So yeah, I think this next vote is a big one. So I feel like in the next episode or two, something's going to go alongside something's going to happen. I feel like with Leorio that's gonna cement him as like the sort of the one to sort of fight against Pariston for the not literally fight, but to become the next chairman. Which Leorio becoming the chairman like this early on is just, it's so nuts. But at this moment in time, I don't see how it's going to be anybody else. Like, I don't know. There could be something where the other two, because we've got Cheadle and Mizai Storm, who are the other two making up the four. I suppose there's nothing to say that something could happen where they go instead. Like, I don't know for instance, could the chairman, I don't know if this is allowed, but could the chairman theoretically give way to, like, because I assume the chairman chooses the vice chairman, right? And if the chairman wants to, he can give up the position to the vice chairman. I wonder if that is truly a thing. Because if that is the case, then nothing stops Leorio from, choosing a vice chairman, which, like I said, I theorized last episode and the episode before when Leorio punched Jean, that Jean did this on purpose, knowing that Leorio would basically rise up in these votes. And Jean's plan was to get Leorio to win. Whether Jean wants to be the chairman or not, I have no idea. But it could factor into that if Leorio chooses a vice chairman. If he somehow chooses Jean, I don't know why he would at this point. Unless he blackmails him and says, like, I'll go see Gon if you allow me to be vice chairman. I don't know. It's all up in the air at the moment, but there's nothing stopping from Leorio like choosing a vice chairman that obviously isn't Pariston and therefore sort of works in our favour. Though, for the sake of the story going forward, even though I will not be fucking, like, the only way I will ever go into the manga to read it, because if you aren't aware already, I'm not really a manga reader. I prefer to watch things in anime form and get the basically all the art forms together to create one basically like massive art piece that I love to enjoy everything about. I like the animation, the art styles, the voice acting, the music, everything coming together to create a like the story. Whereas like reading from a manga page and a book and stuff is something that I don't get. I like to stimulate all the senses, so manga reading is not something I generally do. So the hope is that they bring this back up and continue on in anime form, hopefully. But going forward, back to the point, it would be kind of interesting going forward for Pariston to actually become the chairman, because beforehand, even though it wasn't really touched upon, having Netero be the chairman, like, obviously he's not a bad dude, but having Pariston there kind of like it allows for a lot more sort of maybe corrupt goings on in the association, which could lead down like an interesting sort of story route. So there are things that they can play off because of this. I mean we're coming up to pretty much the last vote at this point, right? I mean, unless it becomes a literal 50-50 split, this is going to be the last vote, I'd imagine, right? Well, I guess he could like share the votes out between the top four, and make it a bit more, because as long as one doesn't get over 50%, it's fine. And then it'll go down to the top two, which are, I'm guessing will be Pariston and Leorio, but I guess we don't know the ins and outs there yet. If I'm going by my theory that Jean sort of allowed this to happen, then I feel like it has to be Leorio. Because the overarching thing is more the idea of it's Jean versus Pariston, and then Cheadle is kind of like sort of like a mediator between the two, kind of, even though she hates them both. So I feel like Leorio has sort of taken that position as a sort of stand-in for Jean, which is funny, because the very first thing of this episode that we got was all of the losers basically giving their little speech, and Jean was using a panda as a stand-in, which, of course, because at this point it doesn't really matter. Jean doesn't really care that much. He doesn't need to be there giving a sort of announcement, as and their thoughts on not being voted in. So yeah, all we know is that Jean has a bigger plan that we're not seeing yet. So there is that. So yeah, it turns out, I guess we'll just keep on carrying going. Actually, you know what? Since we've been on this, the whole voting thing, Ixchampe, the virtual hunter, or it was the virtual hunter, wasn't it? Or the digital hunter. It was one of the two. I think it was virtual hunter. Got 0 votes alongside Botabai in there as well. So they're not in there. And we also didn't get any interviews with those either. Which well, it makes sense. I don't know if, well, maybe not for Botabai because he was like there and around there, but Ixchampe is like obviously in some sort of digital world right now, and they never turned up. I was about to say she, and the reason why is because when I was writing this down, I recall back in Greed Island when it was actually the end of Greed Island where we had that one. Actually, no, there was 2 characters there, right, that were basically talking about how Greed Island came to be, and that every letter of the words Greed Island actually relates to the start letter of the name of the person that, like, of the people that made it. This didn't actually, that wasn't what I got myself. That was that came about because somebody commented. Sorry, if I can't remember which. Who was it that was commenting, but somebody did crop up and say that Ixchampe could be the I in Greed Island. Now, the reason why I was talking about how I went back there and I remember talking about that was because I initially said that was a bit of an odd pun to make there. The initial point that I was making was I think I remember saying that. Because this was a theory-made thing that I was like, oh, maybe Gun's mother was also a part of Greed Island, and she was the first initial in the second part of the name. I remember just putting that out there as a theory. I know it's a bit like sort of convoluted and complex, like the reason like why that would work so perfectly and everything. But I'm sure I remember bringing that up, and that obviously Jean would be the very first letter, Greed Island, right? And that what if the mother is actually I and Ixchampe, and the mad thing about it is that we saw Ixchampe before, and whatever gender she is, I keep saying she because I'm just wondering, is it possible that could be Gun's mother? I don't know, because you don't know. It's very vague as to what gender they could be. It could be a she, it could be a he. You don't know. It's just a crazy massive, like it's like a virtual avatar in a way, which makes sense considering they are a virtual hunter and they're in a digital world, so they kind of use an avatar sort of thing to demonstrate like who they are. But yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up just in case it does end up coming out that Ixchampe actually is, and it's just, I don't know, but who knows. It's just because Ixchampe is one of those that is very odd and like something completely unlike anything we've seen before in this show, and I kind of tie that back to where, back when Gene was talking about, he was going to give information about the mother, right, in the tape recorder thing or whatever. And he said he was going to give it, but then go and like turn it off, and that was it. So we never got information on it. And because it is so different, it's just these theories that keep cropping up, like what if, and that could be another one. But I'm just throwing it out there just in case it is right. If it's completely wrong and I sound like an idiot, I apologize. So yeah, we got that right. Now, starting from sort of like the beginning, obviously went through the panda thing that Gene used as a stand-in. Subone was actually Illumi's spotter, which that totally makes sense. I was wondering, like, there must be a reason as to why it's like sort of cutting back to her, like the only one that is really within reach of Killua, and knows the exact sort of place he is Subone. So it completely made sense. I didn't realize though that it actually tied into her sort of monocle. I assume you would call it a monocle. Theoretically, it's just glasses that doesn't have one half of it, but it's one, so fuck it, I'm calling it a monocle. Which is transmitting video to the mother, which the mother is giving out to, obviously, like giving that information back to Illumi because because there's a clear line, and Subone did actually point that out as well. Like the sort of the almost split line in between the father's side and the mother's side that kind of determine the way that the family sort of thinks or does things, or their motivations and ideals kind of tie themselves to one side. And the the mother's side is Illumi, Miluki, possibly Kaluto, but I don't know. It seems so, because Kaluto was hanging out with the mother the first time we went to the Zoldyck family estate, and then she was seen hanging around with Illumi as well. So, and then she's ended up joining the Phantom Troop. So it feels like she more aligns with the family, like on the mother's side. I don't know how much the story would end up going into that. Of course, you know, when I'm talking about all this stuff, it is a bit weird talking about all these theories that could come up in the future, but knowing that there's only like 5 episodes left or whatever is kind of just like, well, you know, it sucks, because it's almost like, because to me, because they haven't aired, what was it 2014? I think it must be, because it says like the release date here was essentially, what was it, like the 8th, so that would have been what, it would have been September, no, August 2014. So yeah, I mean, it's going on a bit now, isn't it? It's coming off like what, 5.5 years and still haven't continued. I don't. Is it because the manga? Is it because the manga hasn't continued enough for them to justify continuing the anime? Is that the reason why? I don't think I've ever asked like the reason why. I think that must be what it is, though, right? I don't know how far the manga is from this point going on. You know, but you know, if you could give me like that sort of information in the comments below, I'd appreciate it. Just like, you know, like if they were to translate the anime from the manga material, how long, like how many episodes roughly would you say it would carry on for? And that should give me an idea as the reason why they haven't obviously continued on with the anime at this point. The only thing is I'm worried about, like the longer it goes on, the more chance that, you know, like things like the voice actors and stuff, like they don't get the same ones and things, because things have changed so much, you know, kind of morbid to talk about, but you know, like things happen, people, you know what I mean, which, you know, it's not something to talk, but really it's kind of like a very almost like an elitist entitlement point of view, I suppose, to talk about. So yeah, it's a bit bad to talk about that, I suppose, so I apologize for that one. But yeah, so I don't know if that is something that will come up like ever in the future, is the whole split between the family, mother side and father side, and the way that they sort of act differently and stuff. It would be interesting, like, if that point, if it ever come down to like literally because they talk about these intermissions and stuff, and how, like, you know, you're not allowed to kill other members of the family and whatnot, but it would be interesting if there was something that caused them to split and they would have to fight in between each other but choose a side, because I feel like it's obviously, you know, on the other side, the father side, it's obviously Silver, Zeno, you know, though Silver would have got it from Zeno, I'd imagine, you know, and, you know, Killua, so, you know, there's that, but yeah, we also haven't seen the other side, which I, you know, because back when they had the silhouette of like all of the family and stuff, there was one that essentially that had a head that I can only describe as Stewie from Family Guy. Like, it's the rugby ball head, right, or the American football head, like, you know, that we haven't seen yet. So, and I don't know if that's like because it could be the grandfather, it could be the grandmother on the mother's side, or it could be the great grandfather, because I think they pointed out that as well, didn't they? Like way back when they like, it was said, like it read out in the subtitles like all of the family members that were there, and I'm sure great grandfather came up at some point, so he could be the great grandfather, because then it was just the grandfather, right? So I don't know, who knows. But yeah, and then Subone transformed again into a jet this time. That it's just nuts, man, isn't it? It's just crazy. So she can transform, but she can't ride herself. Fuck's sake. She can only be driven by the rider's aura, and that determines, you know, where they go and stuff like that. it's just crazy. It's definitely just one of the most insane powers that I've seen in this show. So yeah. Carrying on with that, Lupe had his own agenda, which I'm beginning to suspect him now. I'm beginning to suspect him, and I'm wondering if he's actually in cahoots with Pariston. The reason why is because it almost works perfectly. If he is known as the guy to find mysterious, like, missing people or whatever, right? If he is the missing people hunter, right, then it almost works perfectly in Pariston's favour that when he became chairman, people started disappearing. Now, with a missing persons hunter, it allows for that kind of thing of them to fuck with the system, like, and basically say, like, oh yeah, like, we don't know where they are, when in reality he could find them if he wanted to. But if he doesn't want them found, then the person that would be good to have alongside him, I'm talking about Pariston, would be Lupe. So I'm beginning to suspect him, especially considering he had his own agenda that he was talking about, monologuing in his head about how he wants hunters to essentially die that are, you know, but I suppose, no, because that's the other thing, isn't it? I forgot, because he did, yeah, in the monologue of his head, he was talking about how he wanted people to die so that, actually, I'm going to have to, aren't I? I'm going to have to look, because the wording is important here. The wording's very important, because because I was wondering, he was talking to let's see, if everything works out, the association hunters will be killed and miss the next vote. Ah, right. Yeah, maybe not then. Maybe not then. Yeah. I think I got it completely wrong there. The only reason why I brought up that as a possible thing was because we see Pariston talking to somebody over the phone and we don't know who it was, and I was wondering if it was Lupe, like, giving off that information. Because, I mean, it's yeah, I don't know then. I don't fucking know. But yeah, I mean, Lupe did have his own agenda anyway, like, essentially wanting people to die, not because he obviously wants them to die, but so that there wouldn't be enough people to vote, so that the vote would be invalid, and it would keep delaying this whole thing of Pariston and whatnot, which is interesting. It kind of ties into when this first started and stuff, and Pariston was like, it doesn't matter, you can make it, you know, last as long as you want, but the outcome's, like, sort of inevitable. So I don't know, maybe he's right, maybe it is right, maybe it's going to be just Pariston is the next chairman and that's it, they couldn't stop it. But I don't know, I feel like Gene still has some strings to pull. Bushidora ended up dying by Hisoka, and we didn't get to see it, for fuck's sake. I mean, I guess it's just basically saying and, like, outlining the sheer difference in ability. Like, Bushidora had no chance still, even against Hisoka, so it didn't really matter that we got to see it or not. It was just one of those things, like, right, that's it, he's dead. And I called that as well last episode or whatever. I said, if there was this is going to be a thing where I don't feel like they're going to last long, which I was correct. All of the people that they sent out died completely off screen, like, basically right at the start of the fucking episode. They only sent them out last episode. You know what I mean? The end of last episode. So they immediately died. Of course they did. And then I said it's going to basically ramp up so that when they die, the next people to go out is going to be Bushidora, because he's the captain. He's the one that sort of leads that whole thing. And if anyone's going to go out on the front line, it's going to be him. And then against Hisoka and Illumi, he's going to die. And he did. So there we go. And then we got to the whole thing with Killua and Illumi, with Hisoka sitting out in the forest, which, fucking hell, that got tense. So yeah, Rule 5 doesn't apply to Killua. So Rule 5 is the one where the same person can't make two wishes in a row, but for some reason Killua can, and we just don't know the reason why. But I did say, like, at the end there, like, at the end of that scene, like, couldn't Killua basically lie and say, you know, well, I suppose, I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. because they would just find out anyway if that was the case. I was gonna say, like, I did say, like, what if you just lie to him and say it doesn't matter to me because I'm kind to her, and that's how it works. But you know, that doesn't kind of go hand in hand with the. I mean, that's clearly not the case, because that doesn't go hand in hand with the whole thing of Killua saying if he does tell Illumi like why he has special privileges, then they'll just put needles in his head again. Which, I mean, I'm trying to think how that would. I don't know. I don't know how that correlates. There's something that allows Killua to have more than two. No, oh, sorry. Like, he can subsequently ask for wishes, whereas other people can't. And somehow, whatever that is, correlates to like something that would force them to put needles in Killua's head again. Now, if we remember, it was to essentially keep him from his, like, essentially almost like releasing his potential. Like, it was almost like a way to sort of dictate that he wouldn't be as strong as he actually is at that point, right? But it also kept him sort of thinking a certain way. Like, it's almost like Killua would be thinking himself about Illumi, and thinking that it was just like the fear of that. It wasn't like, you know, of course he took it out and he realized it was something else. Now he was being manipulated, and it wasn't his own thoughts, but it was basically being implemented through the needle that was doing it. So I don't know how, like, what it could be that correlates to him getting needles put back in his head. Whatever that is, I don't know. That's going to have to be something. Like, I can't even theorize what that would be, because it's a very vague answer. So I couldn't even theorize without, you know, probably going into stupid shit and just looking like an idiot. So yeah, interesting. This was an interesting one. So anything that is done by healing is followed by nice requests. So I love that flip. That's such a great flip, because then it exactly what Killua said. Like, she isn't the one that's cursed. It's the people given the wishes. It completely flips it on its head, meaning that she is not. It's like, because they had already, like, they hadn't even like researched beyond that point. They were just asking for fucking it. Because if you're asking for something that is purely self-indulgent, like something that is so selfish, like an act of, you know, buying a new PC, asking someone, you know, asking to kill somebody else, asking for, you know, 1 million Jenny or whatever the hell it was, like that kind of thing is self-indulgent and therefore asks a greater price afterwards for the requests. Whereas something that is actually the opposite of that changes the requests up. So the requests after, what are the requests afterwards going to be then? Is it just going to be nice things like, you know, give me a hug? That completely changes everything then, because I was like, how are they going to get by the? Oh man, it's just it's crazy, because it fucking hell, it flipped everything in such a great way. But like, in the same vein, I was so, like, in the back of my head, I'm still thinking like, he's allowing for this wish to take place, and because Killua sees Gon like as his, you know, like the one that he cares for the most, that he, you know, he's going to take on these requests himself, and it's going to end up killing him, and there would be something that would crop up because of that would, like, you know, I was thinking that the price for this would be big, and that was something that was in the back of my head, and I'm like, how are they going to get around this? Now that's not even the case. Just by bringing Gon back to this point, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, that is insane. I mean, that just makes her, like, power more overpowered. Like, because then there's going to be no price for it. Like, she's going to be able to bring back. I mean, that's the thing. Like, to quantify something from a request standpoint that is like deadly. So obviously the wishes that people ask for, like, you know, a million Jenny or whatever, that turned into a lot of people dying, and the requests were basically, they couldn't be given. Like, you know, they were just so, the requests were just so high demanding that it just wasn't possible. So you can quantify that side of it, but healing, does it work the same way? Like something like restoring the fingernails, right? I feel like that's relatively low on the scale, I suppose. But like, you know, a wish of, that's the thing. We need to see what the next requests are going to be, really, don't we? Just to see what the deal is. But I don't know if it would work the opposite way, in which, like, because the wish to bring Gun back to a point before he's, you know, to the point back where he's alive, he's out off of life support. I imagine it's to bring him back to a point before he used up all of his nen and all of that. He did all that contract stuff. I assume that's what it is. So, like, but I mean, that has got, like, that's a bigger wish to ask for than to, you know, restore fingernails, which is why I'm wondering, after that, what would the request be? You know, I don't know, because at least with, like, bad things, when I say it's quantifiable, like, it can be, right? It's like, like, you know, give me fingernails is one thing, but then asking, you know, give me your spleen is another thing, you know? Like, you can quantify, like, how bad things get, and also it correlates to, like, the amount of people that end up dying if they can't fulfill the request. How does that work on the other side? I imagine it's the same thing. Like, for some reason, the nice requests that come afterwards, like, if they can't be fulfilled, I imagine it's the same thing. Like, you die if you can't do that, which is weird, because it's almost like two different things. Almost, it's a weird sort of correlation, but it makes sense, the equivalent exchange thing. And honestly, if anything was to give that away, that would have been it. I should have realized. I say I should have realized. You know what I mean? I'm not some like bloody, you know, encyclopedia or something that can just take everything from just one little thing. Everything's obviously easier to think of in hindsight. You know, it's obvious in hindsight, but you know, it's interesting, like, the two different sort of split things of, like, something that is you know, the bad stuff versus the good stuff, and how does that change across the whole board of whatever. Like, does by asking for a healing wish, does that, like, or, you know, something that fixes something, does that change the request fulfillment thing altogether? So if you can't fulfill her requests, even though they're nice ones, does that mean you don't die? I don't know. And also, does a bigger fixing wish make bigger, like, does that mean that Alluka will ask for bigger, nicer requests? I just don't know where that correlates, man. You know what I mean? Because being nice to someone almost doesn't, like, or, like, nice requests almost don't. You know what I mean? It's almost like it's just you're being nice to someone regardless, and therefore, because we associate that with just being, like, thankful that somebody was nice to us, like, the levels don't matter, really. Whereas something bad, the levels do matter. Like, you could have, like, a shit day because you don't like the rain. That could be one thing, but, like, getting ran over by a truck and being paralyzed for the rest of your life, like, there's a sheer, like, fucking clear difference in badness there. Whereas goodness, it doesn't really, you know what I mean? I'm just fucking talking, honestly, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm sure you get what I mean at this point. I'm just rambling, sorry. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, other than that, Hisoka killed Pterodine. Of course. I thought he was going to kill him on live TV, which I wouldn't have put it past Hisoka to do that. made a hell of a statement. Like, but I say that Hisoka's not really out there to make a statement, but it's one of those things that I wouldn't have put past Hisoka to do just for the sheer thrill of doing it on live TV. But you know, it didn't matter anyway. He was killed on the phone, and he didn't even Morel didn't even realize. He was just talking, and he was just like, "Nah, fuck that." Hung up. He didn't even know that, like, for like that last part of the conversation, he was already dead. I'm surprised he didn't hear anything on the other end of the phone. Like, surely you would have heard the thump onto the desk, but I guess not. I guess Morel was just like talking away, and he was just like, I don't give a fuck. Shut up. You know. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So that's that. And so Lupe is the only one left, and I figure, like, at this point, he probably's gone into hiding. I wonder if, like, as soon as Bushidora died, I wonder if Lupe just kind of figured out that, no, this is a bad idea. He probably also, if that wasn't the case, he probably went into hiding after Pterodine had basically, did that live TV, like, sort of conference thing that he was talking about. You know, like, giving away the identity of these people, which obviously in turn, like, that was probably the main reason why Hisoka went and fucking done him in, so that information wouldn't be leaked. But I like the fact that Morel was on the other end of the phone, basically saying what would happen if you give their identities away, even though he hadn't done. Just the thought of getting the identity out there, like, Hisoka killed him anyway, just because he said that one thing. So yeah, but I like the sort of dangerous nature that Hisoka had walking into there, because we kind of see Hisoka as very almost like carefree at this point. Like, he was a lot more scary, like, at the very beginning of the show, but like once you, like, get to know him and stuff, like, he kind of, you know, like his character suggests, and like the way that he's dressed up like a jester, he does have that, like, sort of like that personality where it's easy to just see him as, like, carefree and just think of him as, like, this fucking this funny character, which, you know, we do. But it's nice to see him in that sort of, like, sinister tone again, you know, because we never saw his face, which, you know, which was great. So I liked seeing that. And also the last thing is, like, Illumi's sort of obsession with Killua, and, like, I thought it was interesting that, you know, the whole fixing thing ended up changing Illumi's sort of thought process on everything that was going on, but he wanted to know why Killua could do 2 wishes in a row where other people couldn't. But, you know, at one point Illumi did bring up, like, as long as as long as the rest of the family aren't killed, then it's fine. So that there is still something there with Illumi and his family that does ring true. That is, I suppose it's nice to see, but you don't see it a lot from Illumi, like this. What's the term? I feel like I want to say familial. That can't be a right word. That can't be correct. What would be the term? Fuck, I don't know. He does have love for his family. Put it that way. I guess he must do. Because he does adhere to those kind of rules, I suppose, and there was that whole thing. But it seems like he has more of this obsession with Killua, and I don't know if it's because he's a prodigy and he wants to be a part of that, and therefore that's why he's so obsessed with trying to get involved with that whole thing. And he says that even if he died, he'd be a part of him, you know, forever anyway. So I don't know. It's a crazy thing. But anyway, yeah, that's all I've got for this episode. So thank you everyone for watching. In the description below, I have links to certain things. One of them is the Discord, so you can get yourself over there if you wish. And I also have a Patreon page as well. So if you don't support me on Patreon, that'd be very much appreciated. There is a bunch of different tiers and rewards depending on how much you want to support me with. So there's the early access tier for $5 a month. That gives you access to shows a week early. And yeah, by the time this episode comes out on YouTube for the general public, I'll be finished the show anyway. So you don't need to worry about early access for this. But you know, there's that. There's also $10 there for full length. If you do want to watch any of these shows in full, unedited, then you can do by going over and becoming a full length tier patron. And then there are other tiers where you can suggest for me to watch a show, or you can pay to have me watch a show. So, you know, if you want me to react to a specific show, go have a look at those tiers and see what they offer. But that's all I've got. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.